I'm Kev.
And I'm Steve.
And we're from the internet.
Want to get every episode of We're From The Internet at least a day earlier than the iTunes and Stitcher folk? Head over to we'refromtheinternet.com/pledge to support us on Patreon, and as well as early access, we'll throw in an exclusive weekly show just for our patrons too.
Good morning, Kevin and Stephen. It's the Hairy Steve here. Just wondering what you prefer, whether it be 80s music, 90s music, noughties music, or I don't know, teen music.
Why was he playing the Verve in the background while he was asking that question?
Because he's trying to subliminally say 90s, I guess, was he?
Well, so, yeah, but that isn't even... Not only is that not the best representation of the 90s, it's not the best representation of Britpop, it's not even the best representation of the Verve. That was one of their most dreary, boring, stupid, pointless songs.
This is where you got egg in your face for telling me that the Verve were more popular than Bon Jovi in the 90s.
I distinctly remember you getting egg on your face for this, because...
With stats.
Yeah, but the big stat was Bon Jovi had never had an album in the UK that had sold as many copies as Urban Hymns. The Verve's big album did.
In the UK?
Yeah, which is what that's where we are, you cretin.
The argument was about, like, who was the bigger group.
Yeah, the Verve.
They're not. We've established that.
Urban Hymns sold more copies than any Bon Jovi album in the UK. I haven't checked the worldwide stats.
Well, I checked the worldwide stats.
Yeah, I'm not interested in worldwide. I was interested in UK.
But that wasn't the debate we had.
I believe it was.
And I don't even remember the
tapes.
difference in the amounts. I don't think there was that much difference.
That was one of the biggest selling albums of the 90s. Bon Jovi wouldn't have even had anything in the top 50 biggest selling albums of the 90s. No, they would not. Right, here we go. I'm pausing. Hold on. Right, pausing finished. I've gone to Wikipedia, and I've got the list of best-selling albums of the 1990s in the United Kingdom.
There's only 10 on here,
Doesn't
and you said the Verve were the biggest,
yeah, right.
but Oasis were.
No, I said the Verve would be higher up than Bon Jovi.
No, you said the biggest.
No, I said it was one of the biggest selling albums of the 90s. Okay. Now, it's number 8 on the list. Urban Hymns by the Verve. Sold 2.5 million copies. Peaked at the UK album chart at number 1 in 1997. Let me just scroll down this list and find Bon Jovi. Oh, look, they're not on there. Even Robson and Jerome outsold Bon Jovi.
The album goes to 10.
Bron, off of Game of Thrones, sold more records than Bon Jovi. Simply Red sold more records. Alanis bloody Morissette.
Yeah, but all the
ABBA, half of them were dead.
Greatest hits, though, isn't it?
They sold more records than Bon Jovi. I'm going to pause again and find out how many records Bon Jovi sold in the 90s. I found a top 100 list. Bon Jovi's highest entry was number 31 top-selling album of the 90s. Urban Hymns was the 8th best-selling album of the 90s. I am therefore correct. The egg is on your face,
I'm looking
sir.
through singles now.
We're not talking about singles, and I guarantee Bittersweet Symphony sold more. But, bullshit, is it not there?
I know.
That must have been one of the biggest selling singles of the whole decade.
Well, unless this is some sort of nonsense, like
it'll be an American list or something.
No, it's UK.
Nonsense. You know nothing about anything. You're looking at Elton John records. That's all it is. This is old man music. That was Elton John, Robson and Jerome, Will Young. That's old man music. That's what you're looking at there.
Verve didn't even feature on that list, which is bizarre.
Well, it's an incorrect list then, isn't it? What's your favourite era of music anyway? Now, not that you deserve an opinion. No, it's just
because of the argument we had before.
That I've won again.
No, because before you were saying worldwide, everyone loved the Verve, and now you've just established.
Everyone did love the
and
Verve.
then you said Bon Jovi wouldn't even be in the top 50, and they were 31st. And apparently their single went higher according to that other one, but I don't believe that. I don't think that's right either. Music-wise, it's hard to say, really. I probably listened to more 90s music, but I got into music heavily in the noughties.
Is that what we're calling it?
Apparently, he called it that.
Yeah, but what did he know?
And then the teenies were the other one he said.
Oh, we're not calling it that.
See, modern music...
Americans seem to call the noughties the aughts.
The aughts?
The aughts is what Americans refer to it as. And we're apparently millennials. That's our generation.
Our generation of millennials? Our
generation is anyone born between 1982 and 2010 or something is a millennial.
Wow. So we have lived through like 4 different decades, haven't we?
Yeah.
Which is mad when you think that we're nowhere near 40.
I'm only 24. Yeah, we're millennials, and we lived through the aughts.
Is that what the song was about?
I think so.
I don't know. The 90s just seemed to be when everyone realised that we didn't have Russia hanging over us anymore. No one was impressed.
Surely, though, everyone just answers that question with whatever decade they were young in. It's nothing to do with the music.
Oh, I don't know.
And I would take my decade not being the 90s or the noughties. It would be about 1996 to about 2006. I'll have that 10-year period.
That sounds about right.
That was when I was about 14 to 24. And that was when I was really, really into music. Yeah, so it caught the back end of Britpop. It got the likes of the Strokes in the early noughties, and just takes in a little bit of the likes of Muse and Block Party towards the end of that. And that is what I listen to. That's my music.
I started listening to music briefly in about 95 because I got a radio in my room. And then I remember being on a trip in about 96 when and everyone was singing Oasis on the bus, and just become really into that. Oasis, not the bus singing. And then, from then on, I went for a period where I listened to Ministry of Sound house music when I was in about year 8. Year 8.
Back when you were clubbing. So you bought all the CDs on the way out of Ministry of Sound.
So I remember, we used to go to like France, and I'd just sit there with my Discman.
And an Orangina.
And an Orangina from the boat, and I'd just listen to my my trance music.
My worst sunburn ever was a combination of France and music, because I was sat in a rubber dinghy listening to OK Computer by Radiohead with my Walkman on my tummy. And when I woke up again about 3 hours later, I had a Walkman-shaped white patch, and the rest of me was bright red. Brilliant. I swear you could see the line where my shorts were in my leg for about 2 years after that, where it was dark below. I think it might be because I continued wearing shorts. But in my head, it was that burn ruined my legs for years.
During that phase, I remember I used to mock my sister for tasting music. And then I started to like a lot of that music from about like year 10 onwards, and by the time I got to college, it was, rock and...
Whereas when I put Spotify on now, I don't think I listened to very much at all from the last 5 years. I've completely lost touch. When we first met, I used to make my monthly playlists and everything. I was really up with new music. But now, I just can't be bothered anymore.
See, my wife listens to a lot of Barry Garlow and Mickey Bubbles.
I'm fairly confident I know enough songs now to not ever need any new ones. There's enough music in my life for me to not need to worry about it.
I think the newest song on my my personal list is probably a Taylor Swift song that I heard and I stuck in my head, and I had to put it on there to get it out of my head. But mine's quite an eclectic.
I listened to the new Muse album the other day. That's a bit. It is. It's normal Muse stuff. Although I think it's track 2 on there is just a drill sergeant shouting swear words constantly while they sort of sing over it, and it's all right. It's a little novelty thing. You want it as like a hidden track at the end. They track 2 on the album. Yeah, okay, you got the shouting. Every time I listen to this album after that, can you take the shouting out and just play the song? Because the song under the shouting sounds all right.
They're a bit up themselves, though, aren't they? They don't want you to like their music. They don't want you to listen to their song. They just want you to shut up.
They want me to feel the political message that's within that song.
Speaking of political messages, what happened to System of a Down?
They were rubbish, and
they were not rubbish. They were massive. Look them up.
Yeah, but they weren't any good. I know who they were. They were rubbish. It was just noise.
No, they were excellent.
They were noise.
I've been listening to them a lot recently.
You've got the worst taste in music in the history of the world ever.
I know my Madness on there. I don't like Madness.
Madness are great.
Oh my god!
First album I ever bought was Divine Madness from Boots. $7.99 for the cassette.
System of a Down were a great band.
Madness were a great band. Right, who sold more records, Madness or System of a Down? You know I'm winning again.
You didn't win the last one. You edited the rules until you won.
Yeah, which is what I'll do this time. Only this time I won't need to.
You're the one with the
System
iPad.
of the Down sold 1 record to you. Madness sold loads of records to everyone else in the world. Sidebar, this is 10 minutes later. We've checked the figures. How many records of System of a Down sold?
Over 40 million.
How many records of Madness sold?
Over 80 million. So it's like 2-1.
I win again.
So, we didn't debate that one, did we? But if everybody bought...
Listen, rewind 3 minutes, see if we debated it, kids.
What we're saying here is that everybody in the world bought 2 Madness and 1 System of a Down album.
Want to get your question answered on a future episode of We're From The Internet? Head over to we'refromtheinternet.com/question, tweet your questions at KevinSteve, email kevinsteve@gmail.com, or post them at facebook.com/KevinSteve, or even leave them in the comments for this episode.